School it open a Chamat Zion. I want to begin where Rabbi Aluf left off, and that is with Hakarat Tov to the SCA, not only for the classes that they put together today, but for everything that they do all year round, the classes, the experiences, young adult focus, college campuses. It's really an organization that has not only brought the community together, but has been at the forefront of ensuring our continuity and that our values continue to perpetuate. So I want to thank them, as did the Rabbi when he ended last class. The sources are on the board. Don't be overwhelmed. You can pay attention to them, not pay attention to them. Today, we commemorate Tish'a. And Tish'a, at its very core, commemorates the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. In fact, both Bet HaMikdashot. And as we look through the thousands of pages of Jewish literature, there's a myriad of opinions and reasons given as to why the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed. And you read the list and you're almost overwhelmed by the number of reasons that are given and ask, how can it be all of these things? What is the underlying cause of the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash? I take you through some of those sources, and then I land on one that I think gets to the very core of what today is all about. In the first source on the board, if you can see it, the Gemara writes, Mikdash Rishon Mipnei Macharav. Why was the first Bet HaMikdash destroyed? Because of the three cardinal sins that the Jewish people violated: Havodah Zarah, Giloy Arayot, Ushvichut Tamim, idol worship, promiscuity, and murder. But the second Bet HaMikdash, where the Jewish people were doing Torah and mitzvot, and they were following the values. Why was it destroyed? Because of Sinat Chinam, as we know very famously. To teach you that Sinat Chinam is in fact paramount to all of those other three sins. That's the famous Gemara that everybody knows, that everybody quotes when they talk about the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. There are some less famous sources that continue to discuss. The Gemara Baba Metzia, Damar B'Yochanan, Lo Charavai Yerushalayim, Ela Shedanu Ba Din Torah. The reason why the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed is because they judged the people with Torah. So the Gemara asks, Ela Dinei Demagzita LeDayanot. Well, what did you want them to do? Weren't they supposed to be ruling with Din Torah? Ela Ema, rather you have to say, Shehe'emidu dinehem al din Torah velo avdu lahem lifnim mishurat adin. Because they judged based on the letter of the law, and the judges were not going above and beyond, and they took the emotion and the humanity out of judgment. Interesting. Another Gemara lists more reasons. Amar Abaye, source number 3, Lo charavai Yerushalayim ela b'shvil shechilu ba'at Shabbat. The reason Bet HaMikdash was destroyed is because they violated Shabbat. Amar Rav Hamnuna, Lo charavai Yerushalayim ela b'shvil shebitlu ba'at tinokot shabet Rabban. The reason the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed is because there was a lack of education. The children were neglected. Nobody was teaching the young adults. Amar Ula, Lo charavai Yerushalayim ela b'bnei shelo haya lehem boshet panim zeh mizeh. The reason Bet HaMikdash was destroyed is because there was no shame. No shame anymore. People did whatever they wanted to do. Nobody was embarrassed. Nobody had any shame. Nobody cared what other people thought. Nobody had perspective. There was a breakdown in society. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Lo charavai Yerushalayim ela b'shvil shehushvu katan vegadol. The reason the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed is because of a lack of respect. The people who should have gotten respect were treated like little children, and the children were treated like adults. Everybody was on the same plane. No respect. Hamar Rav Amram bered Rabbi Shimon bar Abba, Hamar Rabbi Shimon bar Abba, Hamar Rabbi Chanina, Lo charavai Yerushalayim ela b'shvil shelo chichu ze et ze. The reason the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed is because nobody criticized anybody. People just let things slide. You made a mistake. You wronged me. Nobody had open and honest dialogue. Nobody was transparent. Everybody let things go. Nobody was willing to have the difficult conversations. And finally, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Lo charavai Yerushalayim ela b'shvil shebizu ba tamidei chachamim. The reason the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed is because they denigrated the rabbis. Pick one. Pick a reason. Why was the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed? I can get as grand as not keeping Shabbat, as minuscule as we're not criticizing each other, as grand as Sinat Chinam, and as minuscule as disrespect, which is not minuscule, but in relation, I might consider it that way. And all of these could make sense. But there's a Gemara in Masechet Nedarim, in source number 4, which seems to pose a very far-reaching reason as to why the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. But before I get there, I want to skip to source number 5. Because it seems that we're guessing as to the reason why the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. But I don't know why we're guessing. God himself, in Sefer Yirmiyahu, in fact, in the Pesukim that we read in the Haftarah this morning, tells us very clearly why the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. It says in Sefer Yirmiyahu, in source number 5, Mi ha'ish hechacham v'yaven et zot, v'asher diber pi Adonai elav v'yagida. Who is wise enough to understand? Hama avda ha'aretz nitzata kamidbar mibeli over v'yomer Adonai al ozvam et torati asher natati lifnehem v'lo shamu b'koli v'lo halchu ba. You know why the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed? I don't know why you're all asking the question like it's so difficult to figure out. It's very simple. You left Torah. I gave you a constitution. I gave you a book of values. I gave you a Torah. And you left it for naught. And then you look at me and you ask me, why is this happening? It's very simple. You're not doing what it is that you were told to do. It's that pasuk, which is the source for the Gemara in Masechet Nedarim, which takes what God says and seems to turn it into a far-reaching reason as to why the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. The Gemara in source number 4 writes, Dichtiv, as it says in the Sefer Yirmiyahu, Mi ha'ish hechacham v'yaven et zot. Who is the wise man who understands? Davar ze nish'al hachachamim v'laneviim v'lo pirshuhu. The question was asked to the rabbis, to the prophets. Nobody had an answer. Ad shepirshu kadosh baruch hu be'atzmo, until God himself came along and said, Vayomer Adonai al ozam et torati, you left my Torah. That's why. Hainu lo shamu b'koli. They didn't listen to my voice. Hainu lo halchu ba. They didn't follow the ways of Torah. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav she'en mevarchin b'Torah techila. You know what it means that they left Torah? You know why the Beit HaMikdash in all of its glory was destroyed? You know why the Navi in Perek Dalet of Yirmiyahu that we read this morning says that mothers were eating their own children because the starvation was so severe? Because people weren't saying Birchot HaTorah before they learned. That's why the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. Not because we violated Shabbat, not because of Sinat Chinam, not because of Gilui Arayot or Avodah Zarah, not because of disrespect, but because when you went to say the Berachot in the morning, you skipped Birchot HaTorah. That's why the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed. It seems to be a very far-reaching reason to explain one of the most tragic episodes in Jewish history, if not the most tragic episode. The Radak, on the Pesukim in Perek Bet, which is at the bottom of the page, begins to explain the answer. Yirmiyahu writes, Kohanim lo amru ayeh Adonai, the Kohanim, and all this was happening, were not saying, where is God? V'tosei Torah lo yidauni, and the people who were supposed to teach Torah didn't know me. V'haroim pashubi, and the shepherds, the leaders, sinned. V'haneviim nibu babal v'achareh lo yo'ilu halachu. And the prophets were screaming, why are you not following Hashem? And nobody listened. The Radak, in explaining Tosei Torah, writes as follows. Hem achachamim lomdei Torah, the teachers who were supposed to know me, shelo lamdu Torah lishma, they were not learning Torah for the sake of Torah. V'kayem mesha katuv ba, to do what's in it. Hela lomdim bepeh velo belev, they learned with their mouths and not with their hearts. Zehu lo yida'uni, that's what it means when it says they didn't know me. Ki ha'machshava ha'tova v'ha'ma'asim ha'tovim hu da'ata lo halimud levad. Because true Torah doesn't sit in the learning of it, it lies in the doing of it. Rabbi Yehuda is making a broad stroke statement that is the cause, the explanation for all of the other reasons that we read. You know what the problem was? Torah became academia. Torah became just another opinion. Torah became what people did and not who they were. And therein lies the problem. And that was symbolized by the fact that they were not saying Birchot Torah when they sat down to learn. Because when you sit down to open a science book, you just open the science book. And when you sit down to learn math, you just open the book because it's not a holy venture, it's an intellectual pursuit. When you treat Torah in the same way, symbolized by the fact that you didn't stop and pause before you open the book to say, I'm about to engage with a text that defines who I am, what I stand for, what my belief system is. You know what happens? Eventually, you lose your respect for the rabbis. You stop keeping Shabbat. People don't help each other grow. There's promiscuity. There's sinat chinam. Because when Torah becomes a checklist, and the checklist becomes too overwhelming, things fall off the checklist. And that is the root for all of the sins listed as to why the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed. You didn't say Birchot HaTorah before you learned. Meaning, Torah became an intellectual pursuit. It wasn't who they were. And it's very clear in the Navi. What's the Navi screaming about? Stop bringing korbanot. You guys, you missed the point. Your korbanot that are empty are not helping. Because you're corrupt in here, but you think you can band-aid it by bringing an animal and slaughtering it. Torah was what was leaving their mouths, not entering their hearts. And so there was a breakdown in society. Because Judaism became what they did and not who they were. But the ironic thing is that God anticipated this. God said that this was going to happen. He predicted exactly this predicament back by Har Sinai. Says the Torah in source number 7, the entire nation saw the voices, ואת הלפידים, את כל השופר, ואת ההר השן, וירא העם וינועו ויעמדו מרחוק, and the people are trembling from the experience at Har Sinai. ויאמרו אל משה, and they say to Moshe, דבר אתה עמנו ונשמע, you should speak to us and we will listen. ואל ידבר עמנו אלוהים פן נמות, God can't speak, because if God continues to speak, we will die. ויאמר משה לעם, אל תיראו. And Moshe says to the people, do not be afraid, כי לבעבור נסות אתכם בא האלוהים. God is coming to test you. ובעבור תהיה יראתו פניכם, ולבלתי תחטאו. And he is making sure you don't sin. What does that mean? God was testing the Jewish people. There are multiple ways to understand the word linasot. Rashi, Ramban. But the Ramban quotes Rambam in Moreh HaNevuchim. And the Rambam in Moreh HaNevuchim writes that it doesn't mean that God is testing you now in this moment in time. It means that God is planting the seeds for the moment in time when you will be tested. Meaning, there will come a time when society will challenge everything you believe in. There will come a time when your values are under attack. There will come a time that everything you believe in is up for grabs. It's at that moment that you will be tested. But what's happening here in this moment in time at Har Sinai is the antidote to falling prey to that test. Listen to what you hear. Let the words of Torah permeate your heart, and you will be able to withstand the test in the future. And that's what happens during Yirmiyahu. During the time of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, there are false prophets, there are Nevi'ei Sheker. And with their witchcraft and their sorcery and their miracles, they challenge the beliefs of the Jewish people, and the Jewish people fall prey. Because that's so much more exciting. The guy that can turn the sky purple, the guy that can make things levitate and then tell me that God spoke to him is so much more intriguing than the text that you want me to believe defines my very character. And so society challenged them. And they fell prey. Exactly what God said. The world will challenge you. And if you are not armed with a deep belief in who you are, the world will bring you down. But the world doesn't always challenge us with Nevi'ei Sheker. Sometimes the world challenges us in other ways. Today we don't have Nevi'ei Sheker. Nobody's turning the sky purple. Nobody's making things levitate. But today the challenge presents itself in different ways. Today the college professor on the prestigious college campus presents the challenge. When he tells you or your students that to believe in God is to be delusional. When he tells you that Israel is the new Nazism. When he tells you that your gender is optional. When anti-Semitism refaces itself as anti-Zionism. When the world says that those who believe in an ancient religion are just as ancient as the religion. That's how the world challenges us today. And whether or not we overcome the challenge lies in the answer to the question we ask ourselves based on the reason why the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, and that is because we didn't make Torah who we are. Instead, we made it what we do. The answer to the question of, is Judaism your occupation, or is Judaism your being? And the answer to that question will define whether or not we overcome those challenges. Because if Judaism is just my occupation, once my occupation becomes overwhelming and the world challenges it and tells me that I'm crazy, all of those things fall by the wayside. But when Judaism is my very being, it's my character, it's who I am, it's my constitution, then you, college professor, can profess all you like. But I'm not buying. Because that's not who I am. And no argument is going to change me because that's what I believe in. But it's scary to think that the Torah anticipated this as well. In source number 9, from Parashat Ki Tavo, when the Torah is talking about the blessings and curses, it says, Yolecha Adonai etcha ve'et malkecha asher takim alecha el goy asher lo yadata hata va'avotecha ve'avadat Hashem Elohim acharim etz va'even. When you don't follow the words of Torah, God is going to chase you out of the land and you're going to worship idols. And the Mifarshim all ask the question, how is that a punishment? That seems like the cause. Because I worshipped idols, because I believed in foreign gods, you kicked me out of the land. How is being kicked out of the land and worshiping idols a consequence, an effect, and not a cause? Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch explained the pasuk in a very profound way. And he writes, this pasuk means the following. Should you not follow Torah? Should you make Torah your occupation and not your being? You know what's going to happen? Society will raise your children. Foreign values, foreign ideas will be what is inculcated into your children, and in that you will have the greatest punishment. Somebody else will raise your children. A society that doesn't believe in what you believe in. You know why? Because you didn't believe in it either. It was what you did, right? Wasn't who you were. So they do something else. So your children will do what they do. And that becomes their being. Because the checklist got too long. And you forgot that this was your constitution. And so the world will dictate our values. Just like the Nevi'eh Sheket did at the time of Yirmiyahu. And people bought in. There are 3 things that I think need to happen for us to return to our moral compass. To undo the idea of Judaism as occupation as opposed to Judaism as being. The first is that we need to be a little bit more confident in our Torah. There's a fascinating midrash in Masechet Shabbat in source number 10. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to get the Torah on Har Sinai, he was challenged. ואמר ביהושע בן לוי בשעה שעלה משה למרום אמרו מלאכי אשר לפני הקדוש ברוך הוא ריבונו של עולם מה לי לא דישה בינינו. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to the Torah And the angels say to Borei Olam, hey God, why is there a human being up here? And Hashem tells Moshe, Moshe, tell them. Give an answer. And Moshe Rabbeinu looks at the Malachim and he says, the first commandment says, believe in God who took you out of Egypt. You were in Egypt. I was in Egypt. You weren't in Egypt. Torah doesn't apply to you. Torah says, keep Shabbat. You keep Shabbat. I keep Shabbat. Torah doesn't apply to you. Torah says, honor your parents. You have parents? You just made fun of me because I have parents. I have parents. You have parents? I respect my parents. You don't respect your parents because you don't have any. Torah is not yours, angels. Torah is mine. It belongs to me. It belongs to the people I'm going to give it to. And it is going to be my constitution. How many of us believe that fervently and are that confident in Torah? How many of us sitting in that college room, in that classroom, when the college professor challenges what we believe in, are willing to say, well, you might believe that, but I don't. You want to knock what I do? You could knock what I do, but don't knock who I am. Where is our confidence in Torah? Where is our confidence in the last 3,300 years of values that have kept the Jewish people alive despite any and every persecution alive? The next midrash, and I'll say it outside for the sake of time. When Borei Olam wanted to create man, he goes to the angels and he says, let's do this together. And the first set of angels he went to said, God, this is a bad idea. This is a bad idea. And God burns them right there and then. Another set of angels, you want to make man with me? God, this is a bad idea. It's a bad idea. And he burns them too. A third set of angels comes before Borei Olam and says, you ready to make man with me? Yeah, we got it. We're in. And together they make man. And then the Mabul happens. And then Dora Palaga happens. And the angels who partnered with God in the creation of man go back to God and they say, God, I guess the first two sets of angels were right. Because these guys are a terrible experiment. And God says, I will wait as long as it takes for man to clean up their act and figure this out. If only we had as much faith in God as He has in us, we might make Torah who we are and not just what we do. The first thing we need to change, if we're going to overcome the challenges of today's society, is our confidence in who we are. Stop being ashamed of being a Yehudi. When you get on the subway, why is this the first thing that happens? This is who I am. Again, you want to not like what I do, we can argue. But I'm not giving up who I am. Number one. Number two, the end of the Mishnah that opens Pirkei Avot says, Hem amru shelosha devarim li'anshei knesset hagdola taught three things. Hevu mitenim bedin, you should be thoughtful in judgment. V'ha'amidu talmidim harbe, you should raise many students. V'asu siyag la Torah, and you should make a fence around Torah. What does it mean you should make a fence around Torah? When do I put a fence around something? I put a fence around something when I want to protect it with all of who I am. I put a fence around something that I love deeply. When you tell your 5-year-old child that they can't play in the street, you don't say, look both ways, and if there's no cars coming, you can cross the street, which is a rational approach to playing in the street. Instead, you say,
don't step in the street. You make a fence around the thing that is most precious to you. As we open Pirkei Avot, a book about ethics, about growth, about introspection, the rabbis say, you want to own Torah? Don't love it. Be in love with it. Because it's not just what you do. It's who you are. This is me. Yirmiyahu tried telling the Jewish people over and over and over again, God is not interested in the checklist. You woke up this morning, you learned Torah, but you didn't say the berachot before you started, because it's like science and math. You might love it because it's intellectually stimulating, but you're not in love with it. And that makes all the difference in the world. You want to overcome the challenges that the world presents today? You need to be confident in who you are. You need to be in love with Torah. And lastly, you have to live it. I told the story a few weeks ago. I'll tell it again. There was a man who was getting up brutally early every morning to go to class in shul. 6 a.m. class, 7 o'clock minyan. He would get to the class at 6, out cold for the whole class, drooling on the table. After 2 months, the rabbi goes over to the guy and says, look, I won't take it personally. Just stay home and just stay in bed. He'll come to minyan at 7. He says, Rabbi, please don't take it personally. But the reason I get up and come to shul every morning to go to class is because I want my children to see that every single day I start with Torah. I want them to see that. I want them to see me live it. Next day, Rabbi brought him a pillow. We need to live Torah. The Haggadah discusses 4 children. One of the children is labeled as Rasha. Rabbi Sachs posits that this child is not a wicked child, he's a confused child. And it is manifest in the words that he says, Rasha mahu omer, ma ha'avodah hazot lachem v'lo lo. What is this work that you do, you and not me? And everybody says he's a Rasha because he takes himself out of the klal. He says it's your values, it's not my values. What the Rasha is really saying, though, is, Mom and Dad, this is very cute. It's cute. And we get together on Pesach, and you sit us down and say that, and you make it like you really care. But last week, you didn't keep Shabbat. Last Yom Kippur, you didn't fast. Purim, you didn't go hear the Megillah. Somebody called you on the phone, you told them you weren't home. I was standing right there, I heard you lie. Ma ha'avodah hazot lachem. What are these things that you proclaim are important to you, but you don't live it in a way that it's important to me? You can tell it to me all you want, but you don't live it. So I'm not going to live it. Because we can't teach our children with words, we teach them with actions. So this Rasha's son, he's not wicked, he's confused. Don't sit here and tell me that you revere 3,000 years of values and history and Mesirat Nefesh when you don't partake in that. Who are you kidding? You want to overcome today's challenges? You need to be confident in Torah. You need to be in love with Torah, and you need to live it. The opening pasuk in Parashat Bechukotai, Im Bechukotai telecha ve'emishmotai tishmoru. If you walk in the ways of Torah and you keep them, And the rabbis ask on the redundancy, if you walk in the ways of the Torah and you keep the Torah, why both? Because there's a difference. Im bechukotai telechu means if Judaism is who you are. Ve'et mitzvotai tishmoru means if Judaism is what you do. Va'asitem otam, and then you have the whole picture. First, it has to be who you are, and then you can do them the right way, and in so doing, it becomes a full package. And then nobody stands a chance. Not the college professor, not the false prophet, not the blog that you're on that says that free will is fake and God is delusional. The only way to be able to perpetuate Torah in a way that is true is to make it who you are. And that is what Rav was saying in the Gemara. Yes, there was Sinat Chinam. Yes, there was Avodah Zarah. Yes, there was a lack of respect. Yes, people were violating Shabbat. Yes, people were denigrating the rabbis. You know why? Because it was a checklist. And again, when the checklist gets too long, things just fall off. Because nobody wants to be going against the current of society, doing things that nobody else does. But if it's who I am as a human being, if it's my constitution, my character, then doing those things are automatic. Because I believe in it, and because I'm in love with it, and because I live it every single day. As you go through this Tish'a BeAb, I ask you to ask yourselves that one question. Is Judaism your occupation, or is Judaism your being? Tizku l'Orah Penachat Zion.